The electric kettle in the back of the Gilded Archive gallery was whistling thinly like a flute, steam rising into the rarefied air with the aroma of bergamot and old archival paper. I was at the black quartz counter, preparing Elias Thorne's third Earl Grey tea of the morning with the sharpened efficiency of 6 months in his employ, though in felt like the wrong preposition. More like beside or perhaps in opposition, considering how frequently our wills collided. "The Sotheby's house catalog is on your desk," I said without turning around, knowing he had entered even though his Italian leather shoes made no sound on the gallery's Aubusson carpet. Elias Thorne moved like a critic. Sober, assessing, always aware of the value and position of every piece in his vicinity. "And before you ask, yes," I added the codicil regarding the authenticity of the Greco-Roman statues. "No, I did not ask for your prior approval." Yes, it was the right call. Behind me, I heard the faint creak of wood as he leaned against the doorframe of his office, followed by the distinct rustle of fine silk fabric. "You are particularly defiant this morning, Cora." "It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Thorne. Morning has long been over." I finished straining the Earl Grey tea exactly how he liked it. A touch of milk, served in his specific Japanese ceramic mug, the only one with a small cracked glaze on the rim. I turned to face him. Elias stood behind his ebony desk, like an unyielding collector inspecting his rarest acquisition. A dove-gray suit cut so precisely it looked like a second skin on his broad shoulders. Dark hair pulled back from a face that looked sculpted from marble, all hard lines and an authoritative profile. But it was his eyes that always threw me off balance. Forest green and relentlessly discerning, capable of reading every hesitation, every unspoken thought. Those eyes studied me now as I crossed the silent space of the gallery, and I felt their weight like a cold chain sliding down the back of my neck. I had learned early in my employment that Elias noticed every detail. The way I smoothed the fabric of my skirt when I was about to negotiate. How I bit the inside of my cheek when I was annoyed. The precise tilt of my head when I was about to deliver an ultimatum. "The call with the Munich Consortium is at 7, I said, placing his tea on the desk with perhaps more force than necessary. A slight clink echoed in the polished silence. "I prepared the appraisal notes. Damien will accompany you. I will not be present." His hand, reaching for the mug, stopped in midair. "Excuse me, I am leaving early today." I kept my voice calm, professional, even as my heart started its rapid, uneven beat whenever Elias's attention fixed entirely on me. "I have an engagement." "Engagement?" He repeated the word as if I had used an archaic term. His fingers tapped the desktop once. A rare hint of annoyance from a man who built his reputation on unshakable composure. "What kind of engagement?" "Personal." Manhattan was not just skyscrapers and traffic, it was a tapestry woven with secrets, and Elias Thorne's empire was the darkest gold thread. The Gilded Archive, the elegant gallery on Park Avenue, was just the porcelain facade. Behind it was a world that traded not just art, but power, influence, and antiquities that had been pulled from the earth with bloodied hands. Elias was a black market magnate of rare pieces, moving artifacts across continents, a chess master who saw laws as suggestions and people as pawns. I swallowed, feeling the weight of my own choice, made 6 months ago. When I discovered the truth, the falsified cargo manifest, the murky provenance of a Persian tiara, I should have run as far away as possible. I should have reported it. But when I saw the cold fire in Elias's eyes as he resolved a security issue that would have destroyed anyone else, I stayed. The danger didn't repel me, it electrified me. Staying was signing a pact with the devil, and the devil was beautiful, ruthless, and made me feel more alive than ever. He walked closer to the desk, ignoring the tea I had prepared so precisely. "Personal engagement, Cora?" "I am your professional engagement, 24 hours a day," he said, his voice low and dangerously velvety, reflecting the weight of unspoken words. He didn't need to shout to be menacing, he just needed to be Elias. He was too close now, and the scent of his vetiver and leather cologne hovered over me, familiar and unsettling. I took a step back. "I am your assistant, Mr. Thorne, not your possession," I retorted, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "In my world, the distinction is irrelevant," he countered, his lips curving into a subtle, crystal-sharp smile. "You belong to this gallery. You belong to me, professionally. And anything that takes you away from your responsibilities is a liability." Suddenly, I felt like I was being appraised not as an employee, but as a statue, a priceless piece of art he could not afford to lose. "Your liability is leaving at 5 to meet Eric. A college acquaintance. It's dinner and I do not intend to spread state secrets about contraband antiquities." His green eyes scanned my body for an instant. It wasn't lust, not yet, but intense evaluation. As if he was looking for flaws, breaking points. And his scrutiny made my body, which was wrapped in a severe black skirt suit, suddenly self-conscious, as if I were naked. "Eric," he repeated slowly, savoring the name. I did not like him. "Tell me, Cora, what are you going to wear to your date?" "What I wear is none of your business, Mr. Thorne. I have suitable clothes for dinner at a respectable restaurant," I replied, my voice slightly more shaky than I would have liked. But Elias's gaze wasn't on my voice. It was fixed on my lips for an instant, then moved up to my hair. I had made an extra effort this morning, choosing to wear my light brown hair down in soft waves, instead of the rigorous bun he expected. And yes, I had applied a touch of my favorite perfume, the subtle fragrance of orange blossom. "You are wearing perfume," he observed, his voice now a grave whisper that sent an electric tingle down my skin. He seemed perfectly capable of identifying the exact fragrance molecules. "You never wear perfume to the office. Your hair is down. And you are wearing new earrings. Tiny, but new." My pulse quickened, a fast, uncontrolled beat of alarm and a forbidden thrill. He noticed every deviation. He catalogued my habits with the same precision with which he tracked lost treasures. "Perhaps I decided today was a good day to look like more than just a tea-making archivist," I said, daring him to react. His green eyes narrowed slightly, and the air in the gallery seemed to grow thinner and charged. He took one slow step, closing the distance between us, and I caught the tempting scent of his vetiver cologne and the subtle hint of pipe tobacco he occasionally indulged in. We were so close I could make out the tiny flecks of gold dotting his forest green iris. "And what are you going to do to look like more than just an archivist, Cora? Are you going to try and seduce this Eric with your new acquisitions?" he asked, and the tone of his voice was not curiosity, but thinly veiled possessiveness, the fine silk tearing to reveal the steel beneath. I crossed my arms over my chest, an immediate defensive gesture. "I have a date, Mr. Thorne. I am being, as you like to say, normal and appropriate. Does that offend you? Or do I need a form filled out in triplicate to have a personal life that doesn't involve cataloging your jewels?" The brief silence between us was more deafening than any shout. In it, the truth of 6 months hung suspended, the forbidden attraction, the desire he tried to bury under cold professionalism, and which I fought to ignore. "Don't be late tomorrow, Cora," he said finally, stepping back abruptly, the danger retreating beneath the surface. The impassive mask of the art market magnate was back. 5:30 sharp. "The collector from Athens is punctual." I nodded, my breath held tight in my chest, and hurried away to my preparation cubicle, my heels clicking hastily on the ceramic floor. My hands shook as I grabbed my purse. Adrenaline and the feeling of having poked a predatory beast. Liana, the Egyptian antiquities specialist, glanced up from her desk with a knowing smile. Was the Siberian tiger in hunting mode this afternoon? "No hunting," I muttered, pressing the service elevator button hard. Just a man who confuses boundaries with exclusivity contracts. I managed 3 steps toward the service exit before Elias's voice reached me, no longer professional, but carrying a timbre of command that froze me in place. Change into what, exactly? I turned, exasperated. 6 months of his orders, his ruthless corrections, and the rare, precious praise that arrived like a stolen jewel. 6 months watching him interact with sophisticated patrons and auctioneers, each more elegant than the last. 6 months pretending that the heat that radiated off him, the way he brushed past me while handing off documents, or the way he called me into his office late at night and I caught him looking at me with an almost painful intensity, was insignificant. Clothes, Mr. Thorne. It's generally frowned upon to go to dinner without them. The muscle in his jaw jumped, the only visible sign of his mounting fury. You know what I mean, Cora. I walked back, inexplicably tired of his questioning. Something elegant, I said, my voice sharper than intended. Something that makes me feel appreciated. Is that acceptable to you? Or do you need to approve my wardrobe choices as if I were just another one of your rare acquisitions? For an instant, Elias said nothing. The air seemed to vibrate. Then, be careful, Cora. The men you are meeting are not just college acquaintances. You have no idea what kind of predators are out there. The concern in his voice, a hint of genuine vulnerability he rarely allowed himself, caught me by surprise. I softened my stance. I'll be fine. Eric is an investment analyst. Very safe. Very predictable. Predictable people can be more dangerous than you think. They are not as secure. Not as dangerous as some art dealers I know, I murmured, and regretted it the instant the words left my lips, seeing Elias's face close up, all emotion erased. 5:30, he said, his voice now purely professional. I see. Don't be late tomorrow. Eric, he repeated slowly, savoring the name. I did not like him. Tell me, Cora, what are you going to wear to your date? What I wear is none of your business, Mr. Thorne. I have suitable clothes for dinner at a respectable restaurant, I replied, my voice slightly more shaky than I would have liked. But Elias's gaze wasn't on my voice. It was fixed on my lips for an instant, then moved up to my hair. I had made an extra effort this morning, choosing to wear my light brown hair down in soft waves, instead of the rigorous bun he expected. And yes, I had applied a touch of my favorite perfume, the subtle fragrance of orange blossom. You are wearing perfume, he observed, his voice now a grave whisper that sent an electric tingle down my skin. He seemed perfectly capable of identifying the exact fragrance molecules. You never wear perfume to the office. Your hair is down. And you are wearing new earrings. Tiny, but new. My pulse quickened, a fast, uncontrolled beat of alarm and a forbidden thrill. He noticed every deviation. He catalogued my habits with the same precision with which he tracked lost treasures. Perhaps I decided today was a good day to look like more than just a tea-making archivist, I said, daring him to react. His green eyes narrowed slightly, and the air in the gallery seemed to grow thinner and charged. He took one slow step, closing the distance between us, and I caught the tempting scent of his vetiver cologne and the subtle hint of pipe tobacco he occasionally indulged in. We were so close I could make out the tiny flecks of gold dotting his forest green iris. And what are you going to do to look like more than just an archivist, Cora? Are you going to try and seduce this Eric with your new acquisitions? He asked, and the tone of his voice was not curiosity, but thinly veiled possessiveness, the fine silk tearing to reveal the steel beneath. I crossed my arms over my chest, an immediate defensive gesture. I have a date, Mr. Thorne. I am being, as you like to say, normal and appropriate. Does that offend you? Or do I need a form filled out in triplicate to have a personal life that doesn't involve cataloging your jewels? The brief silence between us was more deafening than any shout. In it, the truth of 6 months hung suspended, the forbidden attraction, the desire he tried to bury under cold professionalism, and which I fought to ignore. Don't be late tomorrow, Cora, he said finally, stepping back abruptly, the danger retreating beneath the surface. the impassive mask of the art market magnate was back. 5:30 sharp. The collector from Athens is punctual. I nodded, my breath held tight in my chest, and hurried away to my preparation cubicle, my heels clicking hastily on the ceramic floor. My hands shook as I grabbed my purse. Adrenaline and the feeling of having poked a predatory beast. Liana, the Egyptian antiquities specialist, glanced up from her desk with a knowing smile. Was the Siberian tiger in hunting mode this afternoon? No hunting, I muttered, pressing the service elevator button hard. Just a man who confuses boundaries with exclusivity contracts. I managed 3 steps toward the service exit before Elias's voice reached me, no longer professional, but carrying a timbre of command that froze me in place. Change into what, exactly? I turned, exasperated. 6 months of his orders, his ruthless corrections, and the rare, precious praise that arrived like a stolen jewel. 6 months watching him interact with sophisticated patrons and auctioneers, each more elegant than the last. 6 months pretending that the heat that radiated off him, the way he brushed past me while handing off documents, or the way he called me into his office late at night and I caught him looking at me with an almost painful intensity, was insignificant. Clothes, Mr. Thorne. It's generally frowned upon to go to dinner without them. The muscle in his jaw jumped, the only visible sign of his mounting fury. You know what I mean, Cora. I walked back, inexplicably tired of his questioning. Something elegant, I said, my voice sharper than intended. Something that makes me feel appreciated. Is that acceptable to you? Or do you need to approve my wardrobe choices as if I were just another one of your rare acquisitions? For an instant, Elias said nothing. The air seemed to vibrate. Then, be careful, Cora. The men you are meeting are not just college acquaintances. You have no idea what kind of predators are out there. The concern in his voice, a hint of genuine vulnerability he rarely allowed himself, caught me by surprise. I softened my stance. I'll be fine. Eric is an investment analyst. Very safe. Very predictable. Predictable people can be more dangerous than you think. They are not as secure. Not as dangerous as some art dealers I know, I murmured, and regretted it the instant the words left my lips, seeing Elias's face close up, all emotion erased. 5:30, he said, his voice now purely professional. I see. Don't be late tomorrow. I nodded and left, the hasty sound of my heels on the marble of the entrance hall echoing. My hands trembled as I crossed the lobby. Adrenaline and the awareness of having escaped a momentary danger, but having provoked a deeper one. The gallery security opened the door for me, and outside, the late afternoon light was almost unreal. The elevator ride down the 30-odd floors of Elias's tower gave me the time I needed to collect my thoughts. This was absurd. Elias Thorne was my boss. A man who moved fortunes and controlled secrets of priceless value. A man who lived in a world of dangerous luxury that I swore I wanted no part of. The fact that he made my pulse race and my skin heat was irrelevant, an inconvenient distraction, a complication I absolutely could not tolerate. Eric was safe. Normal. Boring, perhaps. But boring was good. Boring meant I could sleep without worrying about federal agents or rival collectors showing up at my door. Boring meant a future that didn't involve decoding manifests or bribing museum officials. Boring meant not constantly feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff, simultaneously terrified to fall and desperate to jump. My apartment was a small studio on the Lower East Side, a 30-minute taxi ride from Elias's gallery. I took a quick shower, trying to wash away the lingering tension of our confrontation. The emerald dress was hanging on my closet door, where I had left it this morning, an impulsive purchase I made last week, telling myself I deserved something luxurious, even if it had blown my card limit. The fabric was silky velvet, the color a deep green that enhanced my hair and the color of my eyes. The neckline was high, but the cut hugged every curve before falling gracefully to my ankles. I had never worn anything like it, never had a reason to. I studied myself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back at me. With my hair in soft waves, discreet makeup enhancing my features, and the emerald dress transforming me into someone confident and seductive, I looked like I belonged in Elias's world, as if I could walk into any gala event and command the attention of collectors. The thought made me uncomfortable and thrilled in equal measure. My phone vibrated with a message from Eric. Running 15 minutes late. Meet you at the reserve at 8. Confirm. I confirmed and grabbed my small bag, trying to ignore the tight feeling in my chest. This was good. This was normal. Normal people went out with kind, predictable men who didn't make them feel like they were constantly playing with fire. The restaurant Eric had chosen, the Reserve, was a high-end dining spot, all soft candlelight and silver cutlery. I arrived first, gave my name to the hostess, and was led to a reserved table near the wine rack in the back. The room was bustling with dinner activity, the murmur of conversations creating a pleasant background noise. I ordered a chilled glass of white wine and waited, people watching to pass the time. Couples celebrating. Business dinners wrapping up. A group of friends laughing over shared appetizers. Normal people living normal lives. Blissfully unaware of the parallel world that existed just beneath the surface of their everyday reality. A world where men like Elias Thorne made the kind of decisions that could make fortunes disappear or treasures resurface with a single phone call. I was so immersed in thought that I barely noticed when Eric arrived, slightly rushed and apologetic. Cora, I'm sorry. So sorry. Market emergency. He was handsome in a conventional way. Light brown hair, friendly eyes, an easy smile. His suit was expensive but didn't look bespoke. His smile was charming but carried no danger. Everything about him screamed safe choice. No problem, I said, returning the smile. I just arrived too. The date started well. Eric was attentive, asked questions about my job, which I answered vaguely, having long learned never to mention Elias Thorne's name in casual conversation, and shared amusing anecdotes about his own work. He was everything a first date should be: polite, interested, appropriate. Then why did I keep checking my phone? Why did every dark-haired man who walked past our table make my pulse race? Why did I feel like I was betraying something, or someone, by being here? You seem distracted, Eric observed, refilling my wine glass from an expensive bottle. The gesture was polished, but his blue eyes lingered on me for a moment, seeming to peer past the surface of my smile. Is everything all right? Your boss must be a real workaholic. I'm fine, I lied, quickly taking a sip of wine. Just a long day at the gallery. Yes, he is demanding. Yes, Thorne. Eric leaned back in his upholstered chair, his expression relaxed, but his eyes, suddenly, became more calculating, losing the safe nice guy quality I had appreciated. He's famous in the circuit. Terrible hours, high pressure, deals with priceless assets. Must be tough. But fascinating. Something in Eric's tone, not curiosity, but subtle avidity, made my internal alarms ring like brass bells, echoing in my ears. Yet, I forced myself to ignore the feeling. It has its moments, I murmured, trying to steer the conversation back to his stock market. What exactly does the Gilded Archive do? You mentioned antiquities and artifacts. That must be interesting, dealing with all those international markets, and the people who control them. The question was casual, but his eyes were too focused, too intense. They weren't seeing me, they were assessing the value of the information I might possess. We do several things, I replied, with carefully rehearsed vagueness. International trade, appraisals, collection management. Nothing that would make a crime novel. Eric smiled, and this time the smile didn't reach his eyes. There was a hard, cold glint there, reminiscent of Elias's gaze when he was closing a risky deal. I always thought about getting into the arts sector. They say that's where the real money is, away from the public eye. He tilted his head, blinking slowly. Perhaps you could give me some insider tips on how Mr. Thorne moves his pieces on the board. From what I hear, his gallery operates right on the border of what's legal, and you must know exactly where that border is, Cora. The alarms were deafening now. Eric's charm had evaporated, replaced by the urgency of the hunt. My skin prickled, a visceral premonition. I'm just a catalog assistant, Eric, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear. I file documents and make sure Elias's tea is the right temperature. There's nothing exciting or top secret about my routine. His hand reached out and found mine on the table, his grip slightly too strong, breaking the fine restaurant etiquette. I bet you're more than that. A woman working for a man like Elias Thorne, who deals with assets under the table. You must know all sorts of interesting things, Cora. Things worth much more than your salary. My blood ran cold. The sensation was identical to the touch of cold metal from a stolen artifact. My blood ran cold in my veins. That grip on my hand was not one of affection, but of apprehension. How do you know who my boss is? I asked, the words coming out flat and cold, stripped of all emotion. Of course, I know, Eric said quickly, too quickly. His thumb began tracing incessant circles on the palm of my hand, a touch that should have been comforting, but which made my skin crawl. Sophia, your college friend, mentioned it in passing. She said you worked for a big name in the art market, someone who moves in the world of exclusive galleries and auctions. Sophia doesn't know where I work, I stated flatly. I had been extremely vague with all my friends about my employment at the Gilded Archive. A deep, primal instinct told me that associating my name with Elias Thorne's, even as his secretary, was something that should be kept in absolute secrecy. So, I ask again. How do you know my employer's name? Eric's charming mask finally shattered, revealing something more ruthless and ambitious underneath. He maintained the smile, but it was a forced contraction. Listen, Cora, perhaps I should be more direct. I think we started this evening on the wrong premise. I think this evening ends here. I moved to stand up, but his hand squeezed mine hard enough to stop me. Don't make a scene, he whispered, his voice surprisingly harsh, but his smile remained unwavering, aimed at any curious glances from neighboring tables. Just hear me out for a minute. My family has interests. Family businesses that occasionally intersect with Mr. Thorne's high-level imports. Nothing major, just some overlapping interests in the antiquities sector. His eyes were pure calculation now. We thought it could be mutually beneficial to establish a bridge. You seem like a woman of rare intelligence, Cora. Smart enough to understand how power moves in this world. My heart beat a frantic cadence against my ribs. You set all of this up. The casual date, the connection with Sophia, the reserve. Everything. I prefer to call it strategic networking. His thumb continued tracing those unbearable circles on my skin, like a ticking clock. We're not asking you to steal anything. Just casual information. What are the shipping routes for the next quarter? Who is visiting the gallery on off days? What kind of appraisals he's running? In exchange, we would compensate you handsomely. 6 months ago, the promise of easy money and security might have tempted me. 6 months ago, I hadn't spent every day watching Elias operate, learning to read the cold calm that preceded his most brutal moves, understanding the code of honor and retribution that governed his empire. And one of the cardinal rules of that world was that betrayal was unforgivable. You're asking me to spy on Elias Thorne, I declared, keeping my voice perfectly steady, even as fear and anger merged in my stomach in a hot explosion. Do you have any idea how suicidal that is? We're asking you to be smart. Your boss is no romance hero, Cora. He's a dangerous, violent man. Eventually, his empire will crumble, and you won't want to be standing anywhere near it when it happens. Eric leaned closer, lowering his voice. We're offering a real escape. Money, a safe place, a clean life on another continent, where he'll never find you. I stared at him. This man who seemed so safe and predictable had orchestrated a trap, disguised as a romantic dinner. I stared blankly at Eric, trying to maintain composure as my world spun. I had to know, who is we, Eric? People who can protect me from Thorne when he finds out I know too much? Or people who want to use me against him and will kill me as soon as I'm no longer useful to your network? His gaze flickered, just for a millisecond, but it was long enough. He was a pawn. I pulled my hand from his with an abrupt, uncontrolled force that knocked over my glass of red wine. The scarlet liquid quickly spread across the white tablecloth, like a fresh blood stain, and the symbolism was not lost on me. It was a warning, a reminder of the cost of playing Elias Thorne's game. I need to leave. This time, when I stood up, Eric didn't try to physically stop me, but his voice followed me, laden with veiled threat. Think carefully, Cora. You are not like him. You don't belong in that world of shadows and cold marble. Take the elegant exit while you still can. He sees you as an asset, we see you as a chance. I grabbed my purse and headed quickly for the exit, my breath short and shallow. The hostess gave me a concerned look as I passed, but I couldn't stop, couldn't think, only flee the brutal revelation. Eric knew where I worked, knew Elias's name, had investigated me enough to set up an entire trap, which meant others might know too. They could be waiting, ready to use me as leverage against Elias. The cold night air hit my face as I burst through the restaurant doors, sharp and invigorating. I stood on the sidewalk, trying to calm down, trying to remember how to breathe oxygen normally. My phone vibrated in my purse. Probably Eric sending some follow-up message or a more direct threat. I ignored it. The sensible decision would be to go straight home, lock the doors, and start updating my resume on my laptop. The next morning, I would walk into the Gilded Archive and resign. Leave before the power play orchestrated by Eric's family caught me in the crossfire. That was the safe thing. But standing there on that Manhattan sidewalk, the emerald dress suddenly looking like a beacon of danger instead of armor, I remembered the words Elias had told me late one night, while discussing a rival who tried to undermine a rare antiquity shipment. Fear is a scent predators can smell, Cora. The moment you exhale it, you become the prey. The trick is deciding whether you run or show your teeth. I pulled out my phone, ignoring Eric's insistent messages to find the number Elias had programmed on my first day, a number I should only use in absolute emergency. At the time, I had laughed, calling him paranoid. I wasn't laughing now. I slid my finger across the phone screen, ignoring Eric's pressing messages, and found the contact labeled only as E. Elias had insisted I memorize it and only use it if I felt my life or integrity was under direct threat. At the time, I had thought it was unnecessary melodrama, now, it was my only anchor. He answered on the first ring. Cora. His voice was different from the one in the office. It wasn't the controlled tone of the art magnate, it was rougher, more immediate, almost intimate, as if he had been waiting for my call, as if he knew something was wrong. Where are you? The Reserve, on 54th West. I need. My voice failed, and I gritted my teeth, hating the weakness that showed through. Can you send someone to pick me up? I don't want to take a taxi. There was a silence that lasted 3 agonizing seconds, but which stretched into 3 hours of uncertainty. Then, don't move. I'm 5 minutes away. You're where? But he had already hung up. I stood under the restaurant awning, the emerald velvet of my dress feeling incredibly exposed. 5 minutes later, an elegant black Porsche pulled up to the curb. The driver's window lowered, revealing not one of his usual security guards, but Elias himself. He wore the same dove-gray suit as before, though he had loosened his silk tie and unbuttoned his collar. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had interrupted a private moment to come to me. And his expression, when his forest green eyes met mine, was absolutely lethal. "Get in the car, Cora." I obeyed, sliding into the passenger seat. The leather was warm, and the interior smelled of his expensive vetiver cologne. Elias didn't immediately speed off. He just sat there, staring intently at the street, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "What happened?" His voice was chillingly calm, the eye of the hurricane. "Did he touch you?" "No, not physically." I tried to organize the words, the adrenaline still pounding. "Elias, he knew who you were. He knew I worked for you. He tried to recruit me to spy for his family. He set up the date." The muscle in Elias's jaw jumped once. "What family?" "He didn't say the name. Just that they had overlapping business interests with your imports." "Eric, what?" His eyes cut to mine. "What is his last name?" "I don't know. We met at Sophia's party. Or at least I thought we did." The pieces clicked into place with a cold precision, each revelation more damning than the last. "It was all staged to get to you, wasn't it?" Elias was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then he spoke, and the coldness of his tone hit me like a blast of icy air. "Eric Sterling. Early 30s, investment analyst at Blackwood and Associates. Blonde, blue eyes." "How do you?" "Because I've been watching him watch you for 2 weeks." He finally released the steering wheel, turning to face me completely. "His father is Victor Sterling. They are the biggest private auction intermediaries in the Mediterranean. They've been trying to steal my rare artifact supply routes for months." My stomach dropped. "You knew? You knew someone was watching me and didn't tell me?" "I had someone monitoring him while he watched you. You were never in danger, Cora." "Until I went on a date with him," I countered, "which is why I was 3 tables away all night, waiting for him to reveal his hand." Elias's voice deepened, becoming a threat. "Did you really think I would let you walk into a restaurant with a predator without knowing exactly who he was and what he wanted?" I stared at him, torn between fury at his presumption and a treacherous relief that he had been there. "You followed me. You invaded my privacy. I protected you. There is a difference. You had no right to monitor me," I insisted, my voice laced with resentment. "I have every right," he countered, his voice dangerously low. He leaned toward me, and suddenly the luxurious interior of the Porsche felt suffocatingly small. "You work for me, Cora. You manage the gears of my organization. That makes you my responsibility, and my priority. I am not an artifact you can track like an insured package. No, you are a liability." "And a liability," the words burst from him with a lack of control I rarely witnessed. "You walk around dressed in that emerald velvet, looking like the only treasure left in the world, attracting the attention of every vulture within a 50-mile radius, completely oblivious to the fact that you are a walking target for anyone who wants to strike at me." The silence that followed was more deafening than any shout. Elias immediately seemed to regret the outburst, his expression quickly snapping back to the mask of cold indifference. But it was too late, the truth hung between us, impossible to ignore. "Looking like what?" I whispered, suddenly feeling exposed in the dress that had previously made me feel powerful. His jaw tightened. "Cora, don't start. You said looking like that." "Looking like what, exactly?" "Looking like you know exactly the effect you have," he muttered, pulling back slightly, but still too close. He seemed to be fighting his own control, the restraint he valued above all else. looking like you're trying to drive every man who looks at you insane. My heart was in a chaotic frenzy in my chest, a dizzying mix of fear and excitement. And are you insane, Elias? He didn't answer for a long moment. Instead, he started the car and accelerated into the Manhattan traffic with unnecessary aggression. We drove in a charged silence, the city lights blurring through the dark windows. I should have been processing the danger I had just escaped, Eric's proposition, the implications of rival families taking an interest in me. Instead, all I could feel was the heat of Elias's hand gripping the wheel, the tense muscle in his jaw, and the careful way he avoided looking at me. Where are we going? I finally asked when I realized we were heading uptown, away from my apartment on the Lower East Side. My place. We need to talk, and I don't trust the security of your building. My apartment is perfectly fine. Your apartment has a lock a street thief could break in, neighbors who wouldn't notice if someone dragged you out. You're staying with me tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss permanent arrangements. Permanent arrangements? I turned in the seat to face him, the emerald velvet rustling against the warm leather. Elias, I am not moving into your penthouse just because an auction broker tried to recruit me. An auction broker from a family that now knows you are close to me. A man who will absolutely try again, or send someone more competent. You have made it very clear that you are no longer safe alone in a neighborhood without adequate security. He had a point, however much I hated to admit it. Eric knew where I lived, probably knew my routine. The thought of going back to my studio, of lying in bed wondering if the next creak was someone breaking in, made me nauseous. Just for tonight, I conceded. Then we figure out a real, discreet solution. We'll see. His building was one of Midtown's exclusive minimalist skyscrapers, where the doorman recognized Elias by his silence and the elevator required a coded key card. We rode up to the top floor in silence, the tension between us palpable. I had never been to Elias's home, I had never even imagined it. It felt strangely intimate, crossing the threshold from the professional to the personal, to the dangerously forbidden. The penthouse was exactly as I expected, yet unexpectedly welcoming. Sleek designer furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view worth a small fortune. A stainless steel kitchen that looked untouched. But there were personal touches, old, unfolded maps on a side table, rare books on built-in shelves, a worn brown leather armchair by the fireplace, which looked like his private retreat. The guest room is down the hall, second door on the left, Elias instructed, taking off his suit jacket and further loosening his tie. There are fresh toiletries in the bathroom. I'll have Liana retrieve your things tomorrow. Elias, we should both try to sleep. It was a long night. He turned, heading toward what I assumed was his private sanctum. Wait. The word escaped before I could contain it. He paused, not turning around. What is it, Cora? Why were you so angry? When I talked about the date, your face. I don't know. You looked furious. His shoulders stiffened. I wasn't angry. I was acting professionally. You were. You are. I took a step closer, feeling the adrenaline-fueled courage. And you were at the restaurant. You said you were 5 minutes away, but you were already there. You were watching the whole time. Slowly, Elias turned to face me. In the low light of his penthouse, with his tie undone and his rigid control dangerously slipping, he looked different. Less like the cold art market baron and more like a man at the edge of his endurance. Yes, he said simply, his voice rough. I was watching. Why? Because apparently I'm a foolish masochist who enjoys torturing himself. A bitter, tormented smile curved his lips. Because seeing you dress up for a date with another man was my personal hell, but watching you actually go through with it would have been worse. Because I've spent 6 months trying to convince myself that what I feel for you is just physical attraction, just an inconvenient lust. And clearly, I'm a terrible liar, even to myself. The confession hung in the air between us, raw, desperate, and terrifying. "You can't say things like that," I whispered. "You're my boss." "I know. You're dangerous." "I know that too. This is a horrible idea. Probably the worst one I've ever had." He took one step closer, and then another, until we were inches apart. "But I'm tired of pretending, Cora. Tired of pretending I don't notice every time you step into my line of sight. Tired of pretending it doesn't make me insane when Eric or any other man dares to look at you. Tired of pretending I didn't want to commit an atrocity tonight watching Eric Sterling hold your hand." My breath caught in my throat. "Elias." "Like that," he said, his voice rough. "Exactly like that." The first kiss was tentative, a question. His lips barely brushed mine, giving me every chance to back away. When I didn't, when I leaned into him, the restraint shattered. His hands slid into my hair, holding the back of my head for deeper access as he kissed me like a man starved for an acquisition he had long been denied. As if 6 months of discipline had finally broken. I grabbed the collar of his shirt, pulling him closer, drowning in the taste of him. He tasted of danger, desire, and everything I had denied wanting. His hands wandered down my back, his fingers tracing the zipper of the emerald dress. I arched my body into his touch. "This dress," he murmured against my lips. "Do you have any idea what it did to me to see you in it?" "Tell me," I challenged, and his eyes flashed with a dark promise. "Later. Now, I need it off you." He guided me back toward the main bedroom, our lips never breaking contact. The room was shrouded in darkness, save for the city glow filtering through the windows. All that mattered were Elias's hands on my skin, his mouth tracing a line of fire down my neck, the way he said my name, as if it were both an oath and a curse. The zipper of the emerald dress whispered open. The cool night air hit my heated skin, and then came Elias's hands, warm and possessive. The dress fell to my feet, leaving me in just silk lingerie and heels, feeling simultaneously vulnerable and incredibly powerful under his hungry gaze. "Magnificent," he murmured, and the reverence in his voice sent a shiver down my body. "So magnificent it's almost painful to look at you." He laid me on the bed with a surprising gentleness, covering my body with his, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him closer. "Tell me to stop," he said, his voice husky with contained desire. "Tell me you don't want this, and I will pull away. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll pretend this never happened. And if I don't want you to stop, then..." "Then you are mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have sounded a deafening alarm. Instead, it focused the heat, flooding my core. No more dinners with predictable investment analysts. No more pretending there's anything but formality between us. Mine, Cora, in every way that matters to my world. "Yours," I agreed, and he groaned, his restraint finally dismantling completely. What followed was a mix of everything I had imagined and none of it. Elias was demanding, yet perfectly attentive. He was rough, but carefully generous, taking what he wanted while ensuring I took what I needed. He learned my body with the same focused intensity with which he studied a treasure map, memorizing every reaction, every sound I made. And when I finally shattered in his arms, he swallowed my screams with his kiss, following me over the edge with my name on his lips. Later, we were tangled in the silk sheets, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing random patterns on my shoulder. The city glittered beyond the windows, but here, inside his room, the world felt incredibly small and safe. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Elias was silent for a moment. "Now, everything changes. You move in here. 24/7 security. No more taxis or subways. No more nights alone in your apartment. You stay close to me, where I can protect you. That sounds like a gilded confinement. It is the reality of being with me. His arms tightened around me, the strength of his embrace a promise. I won't apologize for prioritizing your safety. I should have protested, demanded to keep my independence. But Eric Sterling's cold proposition was still a vivid memory. I had stepped into Elias's world, whether I wanted to or not. What about work? I asked. I can't be your secretary and your, whatever this is. Companion, he supplied. You are my companion now, and you will keep your job, if you want to. I like having you around. Though I may need to hire a secondary assistant to handle the filing, as I intend to spend a lot of time distracting you from your duties. Despite everything, I smiled against his chest. Very professional. I am many things, Carissima. Professional is not always the most important one. The Italian term of endearment sent a familiar flutter through my stomach. What does that mean? Carissima. Dearest, precious. Because that is what you are. Rare, valuable, and worthy of being guarded. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. Get some sleep. We have a lot to discuss tomorrow, and I need to settle the Sterling situation. The reminder of Eric gave me a chill. What are you going to do to him? Nothing permanent, Elias assured me. Just making it very clear that you are under my protection and that any future attempt to use you against me will have consequences. Elias. Shoo. This is how my world works, Cora. Actions have a price. He tried to use you. Now he pays. His voice was ice and silk. But since you are asking me to exercise restraint, I will. This time, for you. The next day, after establishing the rules of our new, and dangerously intimate, reality, Elias kept his promise. The meeting with Eric's father, Victor Sterling, was scheduled for 9 p.m. in one of the private, luxurious auction halls Elias controlled, neutral territory, but heavily guarded by his men. I could feel the tension building in Elias throughout the day. The cold focus, the distant gaze he reserved for high-stakes decisions, was back. I want to go with you, I said, as he donned a dark blazer, checking the discreet holster at his back. Elias turned, clear disapproval in his eyes. Absolutely not. This is a high-volatility environment, Cora. He's going to discuss me. I should be there, I insisted, crossing my arms. Eric targeted me. His father wants to negotiate about me. I deserve to be present for that conversation. I am your partner now. Elias studied me for a long moment, the silence stretching. Then, with a slow sigh that revealed a sliver of acceptance clinging to reluctance, he nodded. Fine, but you will remain silent unless I instruct you to speak, and if things turn violent, you will do exactly what Marco tells you. Understood? Your safety is the sole priority. Understood. Safety is not up for debate. An hour later, we arrived at the Bellini Hall, an opulent space closed to the public, filled with antiques and Elias's guards at every strategic point. Victor Sterling was already seated at a large oak table, flanked by two silent men who exuded lethal competence. Victor Sterling was older than I expected, perhaps late 60s, with silver hair and calculating blue eyes that assessed me with predatory interest as we approached. Thorne, he greeted Elias, his gaze never leaving me. And this must be the young woman who caused all the fuss and the danger of route destabilization. This is Cora Vance, Elias said coldly, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. My companion and the reason we are having this conversation. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. My son made an error in judgment. Eric was attempting to establish a business connection. Perhaps his methods were aggressive, but his intentions were purely professional in the sector. His intentions were to recruit my companion to betray and spy on me. Elias's voice was soft, but sharp as broken glass. That is not business, Victor. That is an act of war in our world. Now, let's not be rash. I will be very clear. Elias leaned in slightly. Miss Vance is under my sovereignty. Any future attempt to contact her, to use her, or even to look at her inappropriately, will result in consequences. Consequences that will dismantle your private auction operation. His hand squeezed mine, and I knew he was ready to act. Consider this your only warning. The tension in the room spiked. Victor's men shifted, hands hovering over hidden weapons. Elias's security guards moved closer, forming a protective circle around us. Then Victor smiled, and the coldness of his threat chilled my blood. You've changed, Thorne. Since when do you allow a woman to make you sentimental? To make you weak? Be careful, Elias said softly. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. You are about 3 seconds away from finding out exactly how weak I can be. And it will be the last thing you ever see. Victor raised his hands in mock surrender. I'm just saying this reaction seems disproportionate. Eric tried to seduce a beautiful girl. You've made it clear she is yours. Why not accept my apologies and move on? I'm willing to offer financial compensation for the offense. I don't want your money, Victor. I want your absolute guarantee that your family will never approach Cora again. That you will spread the word throughout all collector circles that she is completely off limits. And if I refuse? Elias's smile was cold and terrifying. Then we go to war, and I systematically dismantle everything you've built, starting with your rare artifact routes and ending with your son's ability to walk unassisted. The brutality of the threat should have shocked me. Instead, I found myself strangely captivated by Elias's fury, his absolute refusal to allow anyone to treat me as a pawn. Victor studied Elias for a long moment, clearly weighing the costs. Then he sighed. Very well. You have my word. The Sterling family will keep their distance from Cora Vance. We will put out the word that she is under Thorne protection. Sensible choice. Elias's hand squeezed my back one last time. Now get out of my auction hall. We watched them leave, the tension slowly draining from the room. As soon as the door closed behind them, Elias turned to me, his hands framing my face. Are you all right? I'm fine. That was. I searched for words. Restrained. That was the most restraint I could demonstrate. If you hadn't been here, I would have put a bullet in him for suggesting you were a weakness. He pressed his forehead to mine. You are not a weakness, Carissima. You are my strength. The reason I get up every day wanting to build something real. My heart tightened at the admission. Elias, I know it's fast. I know we're moving at dangerous speed, but I've never felt about anyone what I feel about you. Like I would set the whole world on fire if it meant keeping you safe. His thumb stroked my cheek. Like I would give up this entire empire, the power, everything, if you asked me to. Don't, I whispered. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes me believe in impossible things, like happy endings for people in your world. What if I told you I'm planning to make us possible? Elias asked, his voice low and full of promise. That I've been working for years to whitewash the facade of my businesses, to separate myself from the volatility and danger of the black market antiquities trade? He pulled back slightly, meeting my eyes. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to think I was doing it for you. But the truth is, meeting you accelerated my timetable. It made me realize I wanted a future where I could have the empire and the woman I love. The words hung between us, raw, honest, and overwhelming. You love me that much. It terrifies me, he admitted, his voice rough. I've done terrible things, Cora. I've hurt people. Made decisions that haunt me. But with you, I want to be better. I want to deserve you. I kissed him then, channeling everything I couldn't verbalize into the contact. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathless, I whispered, "Take me home." My pleasure. The drive back to the penthouse was charged with anticipation. Elias's hand stayed on my thigh, possessive and warm. As soon as we entered, he pressed me against the door, his mouth finding mine with desperate urgency. He carried me to the bedroom, and our clothes were shed along the way. Later, lying tangled in the sheets, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin, I asked the question that had haunted me since the confrontation with Sterling. What happens if Victor doesn't keep his word? Elias's hand paused. Then I keep mine. War. How many people would die? Many, his voice was heavy. That's why I made the threat credible enough for him to respect it. Victor Sterling is a cold businessman. He will weigh the cost of pursuing you against the cost of a war with me, and realize it's not worth it. And if he doesn't? Then I protect what is mine, whatever the cost. He rolled to face me, his expression serious. I won't lie to you, Cora. My world is ruthless. People pay the price. If you stay with me, you will see things, hear things, know things you can't ignore. Are you sure you can handle that? I thought of Eric's cold proposition, Victor's predatory assessment. Elias's world might be violent, but at least he was honest about it. At least he valued me as more than a tool. I'm sure, I said finally, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let it consume you. The violence, the power, the need for control. Don't lose yourself in it so completely that there's nothing left of the man I fell in love with. Something vulnerable flashed in his eyes. You fell in love with me? Somewhere between you being unbearably bossy and surprisingly gentle. Yes, I fell in love. I touched his face, feeling the roughness of his stubble under my palm. Probably the most dangerous thing I've ever done. Definitely the most dangerous thing you've ever done. His smile was self-deprecating. But I promise I will try to remain human for you. Try to remember there's more to life than power games and territorial wars. That's all I ask. We fell asleep like that, his body a warm anchor. The next morning, we established a new routine. Elias made tea while I showered. We had breakfast together before heading to the gallery. At work, we maintained professional distance, though I caught him watching me more than once with eyes that promised intimacy. We are terrible at discretion, I said one afternoon, adjusting my blazer after an intense makeout session in his office. I don't care, Elias said, straightening his tie, looking completely satisfied. Let them talk. Let everyone know you are mine. So possessive. You love it. I couldn't argue. A month passed in happy routine. No sign of the Sterlings. One day, while organizing a shipping manifest, I made the decision that had been forming for weeks. I want to learn. Elias looked up from the documents. Learn what? Your world. How does it work? Who are the players? What are the rules? I leaned across his desk. If I'm going to be with you, I need to understand the board. I need to see the moves before they happen. He studied me for a long moment. It's not too late to leave, you know, to choose the safe life. I am choosing you. This is my normal now. I held his gaze. Teach me. And he did. Over the following months, Elias educated me on the intricate politics of his world. I learned which collector families could be trusted, which were rivals, and which were waiting for an opportunity to strike. I stopped being merely his companion who needed protection. I became his partner, someone he consulted on strategy. "You're good at this," he said one night after I predicted a rival's next move. Frighteningly good. I had an excellent teacher. And I pay attention. My arm tightened around him on the couch. "I've been thinking about the future," he said, his voice softer. "About what happens when I'm ready to pull back from the volatility, about who could manage things in a way that maintained our power but reduced the danger." He looked at me. "About whether you would consider being more than just my companion." My heart leaped. "Elias, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet." His thumb stroked my shoulder. "But I want you to know that when I do, and I will, it won't just be about love. It will be about partnership, about building a dynasty together, something stronger than either of us alone." "That sounds exactly like a magnate's marriage proposal," I said, smiling. "Because it is." He turned me to face him. "In my world, marriage is as much about alliance as it is about love. I want all of it with you, Cora. I want to join our lives in every aspect." "Ask me," I requested softly, feeling the inevitability and excitement at my fingertips. "Not yet," he replied, kissing my forehead. "When I ask, it will be perfect. A moment worthy of the woman who rewrote the history of my world by being impossible to ignore and even harder to resist." 6 months after that first night in the emerald dress, Elias took me back to the reserve, the site of our disastrous first date. But this time, the entire restaurant was closed to everyone but us. Candles floated everywhere. A pianist played softly in the corner. There were no signs of Eric Sterling or intrigue. And when Elias knelt beside my chair, a small box of dark, polished wood in his hand, I knew this was the perfect moment he had promised. "Cora Vance," he began, his voice firm but with an emotion he couldn't hide. "You burst into my life with formal blazers and an implacable stubbornness, completely indifferent to everything I had built. You called me dramatic. You stole my calm. You made me feel in a way I thought had been banished from me. And somewhere between your confrontations and your inside jokes, I fell completely and irrevocably in love with you." Tears were already streaming down my face. "I can't promise you absolute safety. My world is too volatile for that. I can't promise you simplicity. My life is too complex." His thumb stroked my hand. "But I can promise you everything I have, my heart, my loyalty, my protection, and my partnership in building a cleaner, better legacy than the one I was given. Marry me, Carissima. Be my wife, my partner in the dynasty, my everything." "Yes," I managed to say through the tears. "Yes, you impossible, bossy, and wonderfully dangerous man. Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, a dazzling Asher-cut diamond flanked by small blue sapphires, elegant, powerful, and somehow perfectly fitting. It was a symbol of promise and a mark of possession. Then he stood up, pulling me into his arms and kissing me as the pianist played a triumphant note. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "My Cora, my treasure, my home." "And I love you," I replied. "My Elias, my impossible choice, my perfect danger." We were married 3 months later in an intimate ceremony, held on the terrace of the Gilded Archive, under the Manhattan moonlight glow, with both our worlds present, his family and mine, his associates, the official and the dubious, and my few friends, the legitimate and the secret. My father walked me down the aisle, looking slightly disoriented by the pomp and the suited guests who looked like cover models. My mother cried throughout the entire ceremony, but when Elias took my hands and pledged himself to me in English and Italian, his voice thick with promises, nothing else mattered. Not the danger, not the complications, nor the whispers about the perilous dynasty I was entering. All that mattered was the way he looked at me, as if I were his anchor, as if I had taken a man who lived in shadows and exposed him to the light. Our first dance was to an Italian melody his mother had loved. Elias held me close, whispering the translation into my ear, "You are my sun, my moon, my refuge. Without you, I get lost in the labyrinth. Lucky I'm here to catalog the map." Then, I teased, and he laughed, spinning me across the dance floor. Later, as we left for our honeymoon, a month in Sicily, visiting the Thorne family's fortresses and vineyards, I looked back at the reception, at the improbable collection of people celebrating our union, at the life I had stumbled into by sending an accidental text to an emergency number. "Any regrets?" Elias asked, following my gaze. I turned to face him, this dangerous, powerful, and surprisingly tender man who had claimed my heart without asking permission and fiercely protected it ever since. Only that I didn't wear the emerald dress more often. "Clearly, it has magical powers. That dress almost forced me into a crime of passion," he murmured. His hands found my waist, pulling me close. "Watching you walk out in it, knowing you were getting dressed up for another man. I wanted to lock you in my penthouse and never let you leave. So possessive, always." He kissed me deeply, ignoring the applause of the few remaining guests. "But you love it." "I love you," I corrected. "The possessiveness is just proof." "Where are you going in that dress?" he had demanded 6 months ago, jealousy and desire warring in his voice. Now I finally had the answer, exactly where I was meant to be. Home.